President Agboha Esquire is the Executive Director, Freedom of Information Council, and is joining us virtually as we look at the issue of the bill before the National Assembly that is recommending sanctions for those who refuse to vote. Nigeria's voter apathy is quite high. Make a comparison between number of registered voters and the actual votes for the day. The margin is usually very high. A lot of factors have been attributed to this. But interestingly, on election day, you probably will see young people within the voting age play football. You find market women that are just waiting for the voting hours to end so they can continue their business. And you find those who probably will go to farm and all of this. And at the end of the day, you find Nigerians complaining about poor governance, the wrong people being elected into position of authority. Do they have any justification to make these comments or criticisms when they actually don't come out to vote? How justifiable is this bill before the National Assembly? The apathy that we see, isn't it a reflection of the fact that people still believe that their votes won't count even if they come out to cast their votes? Mr. President, give us your take on all of this.
I think the legislative agenda for compulsory voting is in the right time. Nigerians should be compelled to vote, but there should be no sanction. Anyone who doesn't vote may have issues with no tax rebates, no social net incentives. I think those should be the social sanctions. No prison terms should be assigned to non-voting. But that will prepare persons to vote. I was at the Supreme Court recently to canvass for inmates, like prisoners to vote. And by the grace of God, we have gone very far on that. We are also on the policy table to conscientize the military, the youth corpers, to vote during elections. But that cannot be possible except there is a mobile code given to them along with their registration numbers, so that wherever they are posted to, they can activate it online and they can vote in the nearest polling unit. So the idea of compulsory voting is very welcome. We all need to vote. Persons must vote, but the sanctions should not be punitive, but it should be social. So if you don't vote, you don't get benefits that other citizens are entitled to.
Currently, Nigerians on the average don't have any benefits, no social security, no welfare packages for its citizens. So how enforceable is this without the sanction? Nigerians being who we are, until the big stick is wielded, we don't seem to want to take action to respond to policy initiative.
I do not think that Nigeria don't enjoy social incentives. It's not true. We enjoy social incentives by default. As you are there, you are public, you work for a private organization. I'm sure you are entitled to also pay some tax. I'm sure you may not have paid. I'm sure if you have also paid, you didn't pay complete. So the taxation issue is a way of social net given to Nigerians. So we must appreciate that. We get a lot of things that is free in this country that we don't pay for. So those social incentives should be removed from those set of Nigerians. So there should be a massive tax drive on those who are voting age, who didn't vote. They should be removed from the social register for those who are voting age, who didn't vote. They shouldn't get. There are so many incentives I think that's coming up in the network from this government, and they should be disconnected from it completely. So it is wrong for Nigeria to say, I don't benefit anything from this country. To study medicine for less than 200,000 naira in a year, where can you do that in any part of the world? Not even in Pakistan. So those are incentives. So those incentives should be removed. Nigerians who are not voting, when they are admitted to the university, to pay the main school fees, while those who have been voting will have some rebates. I think those things will work. We make people be responsible. We must be responsible as voters. We must be responsible as Nigerians. Oh, the vote doesn't count. Who told you? Even if it doesn't count, can't you make it count? It is a systemic thing. The America that we compare with has been there for a very long time. They also have their own issues. They are still having their own issues. Even currently, you will see an American president speak like that. We'll be wondering what's happening. So it is ongoing conversation. We must compel people to vote. There is no excuse.
All right, Barrister Peter, you made mention of the fact that there is no need for there to be sanctions, okay, legal sanctions, probably going to prison or paying a fine. What do you think, or how do you think that the federal government can actually go about this? How do you compel someone to do something that they may not necessarily believe in, especially if they have issues like violence, electoral fraud, and cases of voter apathy continuing because a lot of persons do not believe in the system? How do you think that the federal government can turn this around?
I've just mentioned it, that there are some social sanctions. Social sanctions, somebody can be made to sweep community market, somebody can be made to clear around the sports centers, Ugbe Stadium. Somebody can be made to pay some taxes that ordinarily wouldn't have been, the government would have just run its eyes away. So those are social sanctions. And also inclusive. You just mentioned violence in elections as an excuse. Yes, everybody, if the government feels that you didn't vote and you're voting age, you ought to have voted, you can state your own side of the story. I didn't vote for this reason, for this reason, for this reason. So they can, okay, you can go. It's explainable. But that you don't have any reason not to have voted. Your voting centers around you or that you registered with have no issues of violence. There's nothing that happened in that center. Everything went on where you didn't vote. I think you have a case to answer. May not, you're not to be taken to court, but government should profile those people who didn't vote and ensure that they maximally comply with the fiscal laws of this country and they are disconnected completely from the social net and register.
Should we really focus on compelling people to vote, or our energy should be channeled towards ensuring that INEC live up to its name of truly being independent by conducting um, elections that are acceptable to all Nigerians? I've heard some analysts say if we want to have a credible 2027 elections, INEC should be able to transmit election result electronically across all the elections, whether it is state assembly, governorship, national assembly, and even the presidential election. A situation wherein INEC is at liberty as to the modes to transmit election result in every election will not help the 2027. What your 2027 election, what do you make of this as a challenge?
Result is not a challenge for mass voting. Where there is a mass voting, the more the merrier. There are more evidential proof that there were distortions in some polling units or centers. So if I do not even think this government will want that mass voting because it can be very destructive. When there's a mass voting, people came out to vote, and you mess up the process, they will hold you accountable. They will hold electoral officers accountable. They will hold the youth corpers posted there, ad hoc staff accountable to ensure that there is transparency. So if you want transparency in an election, let all us come out to vote. So putting my risk, the fear of being sanctioned, or the compulsion, the sacrifice, putting all together, I will ensure that everything that needed to be done there to transcribe what necessarily happened in that election will be done. Will not allow any stone to be left unturned. So mass voting is one way to probe the electoral process and to hold the officers accountable.
You talked about mass voting, but I'm talking about transmission of election result. We saw in the last election where results from the National Assembly were transmitted electronically. But when it got to the presidential election, some magic started happening that people are still talking about to tomorrow. And if that problem is not fixed, don't you think that will mar the credibility of the 2027 election against the background of where we are coming from the 2023 elections?
I've just said that the mass voting fixes the problem that you have raised. Electronic transmission of result. If there is no electronic transmission of result, is there no paper transmission? Was the result not recorded in a paper sheet? So if there's mass voting, you can be rest assured that 10% of people who voted in a center have a copy of that result. And if there is 1,000 people who voted in a center, 10% of it is 100. Rather than having 2 or 3 persons or just one person, which is the the party agent having the result, you have 100 persons with a copy of the result. Will that not disrupt the destruction that is being done by INEC over the years? So you need mass voting to check such abnormality.
All right, Barrister Peter, I'd like to take your attention to the aspect of essential workers. A lot of essential workers rarely have time to actually go out and exercise their rights to vote. do you think that this law or this new bill that they're trying to propose would actually affect essential workers in any way? I, for one, rarely have the opportunity to vote because I'm out on the streets gathering information for other people who are actually out there. It's a big thing, a big deal, because it means I do not necessarily have that right or do not exercise my right. And a lot of persons also are in that same position. Security agencies are out on the field. They do not get to vote. Do you think that this bill will affect us in any way?
That's a very good question. But meanwhile, my name is not Barrister Peter. I'm President, is my name.
My apologies.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Now, we I did a press release some months ago, I think in April, in March or in April, where we have identified that the media, the security, the UCOPers are tactically excluded from voting because of the way their work is, the postings. Now, we have written to the chairman of INEC, Yakubu, to please identify these essential workers and give them special numbers upon which they can vote in any polling unit they are doing their primary assignment. They just activate it. The special number combined with their voters registration card align them with any polling unit that they find themselves. In a way, starting the voting, online voting, because they would not be the one that will not activate it themselves and just vote online in the center where they are. And the vote aligns with that center which they have presented themselves in and state the reason why they are voting at that point, which of course means is that media coverage, security support, or ad hoc staff. So these things are not difficult to do. It's just that our electoral umpire, the ministers that are there, are not serious. You can vote wherever you are assigned to do coverage on your phone. You are essential person. So online voting should start with those sets of persons. We have written to our next, we have not gotten the feedback, and we are waiting for you to exit and work with the new one. So it must work. We must get mass voting. People must come out to vote so that the system can be held more accountable. The more we come out, the more we are able to check the abnormality.
What is the most exciting thing about this bill on compulsory voting to you? What's the most exciting part of it to you?
In 2014, I went to the Federal High Court to ask that because you declare that inmates should be allowed to vote. In 2016, we are the Court of Appeal because the High Court gave us, allowed the inmates to vote and said it's only the inmate that I came with, which are 6 in numbers, that should vote. Because that others did not come. It's a very strange decision. Then I went back to the Court of Appeal in 2016. The Court of Appeal said no, that was the wrong decision. That every inmate should be allowed to vote. But that inmate should be taken to the nearest polling center to vote. I said no, this is not what we want. We want them to vote inside the prison so that you will not say tomorrow that there's a mass escapee of inmates that are very liable. So I went back to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said no, that what the Court of Appeal is saying is that vote at the nearest polling unit is one, is logistic reason. And it's two, is that INEC has the prerogative to decide where anybody will vote and said this is your final bus stop. So we have now also written to INEC to say this is how far we have gone. Please comply with this decision and ensure there's mass registration of inmates in the next couple of months preparing for 2027 election. So suddenly somebody brought my attention to it that, oh, there's one senator here that is doing something similar. He's passing a bill for compulsory voting. And I welcomed him. We even did a press conference to commend him that he should go on and hope that he succeeds so that he can complement our work. So the interesting part of compulsory voting is that our work of 2014 to 2025 is now being embraced by the National Assembly, perhaps in another dimension and more in a more broad perspective.
All right, President Peter, I'd like us to
President.
Yes, President Peter. I'd like us to look at the aspect of a lot of persons, critics actually saying that this particular bill is an infringement on the rights of everyday Nigerians. Do you think that in any way it would actually contradict our national constitutional rights? Also, let's look at some critics who are actually also of the opinion that if this bill should scale through, it could be used as a tool for political intimidation. What is your take?
No, there are always critics of policies. Policies must be criticized. It's one of the things. It doesn't mean that because there are persons criticizing that policy is faulty. If you have a right and someone compel you to do what you have to do. It's an obligation of citizens. You must vote. It's an obligation. So if you don't do your obligation and there's a law passed to compel you to do that obligation, nothing is wrong with it. It doesn't violate any rights. Every right has its own limitation. Right to movement have a limitation. Right to life have your limitation. By the time you violate some boundaries, your right to that life can be seized. So it doesn't violate any fundamental rights. It only enhances public participation and good governance. Section 42. So the states must promote laws that enhance public participation and good governance. The public must support laws that promote public participation and good governance. So anybody saying that, oh, it will be used for political advantage, it was the same problem I had. In 2014, I was in the High Court. It was clear. They told me very clearly that, oh, President Jonathan on the South is in power and maybe you are in court to get more votes for him and all that. So the person presiding is not from the South. So he said, I will give you have a very good case. I will give you this relief for 6 applicants. It is that serious. So any step you make in an electoral process, you are a suspect. They feel that you want to maneuver the process. So the criticisms is not watertight. Government should proceed with it and pass the law and make it compulsory. And that will be one of the landmark legislation of the Akpabo-led Senate.
But Mr. President Agboha, let's quickly, look at the workability and the feasibility of this bill coming to fruition pre-2027, because the next election, general election, is in 2027. How realistically possible can we have this bill in place to bring about, massive voting? Because I believe essentially that's the major focus of this bill.
It doesn't take much for bills to be passed. One, it passes the first, second, and third reading. It passes through the red chambers as well. It's sent to the president for assent. So a bill in this nation will be passed for 3 months, some 6 months, some a year. So we still have time. So I'm very sure the bill has gone to some very reasonable extent that even between now and December, the bill should be out. So we have the law of 2026 to prepare for the logistics, and we have 2027 to test run it. I think it's something that Nigerians should work on, and not just take criticism for the perspective that, this organization has spoken against it, then it is wrong. And Africa have its own democracy. It's called Afro-democracy. We must devise means to sustain it. We must devise channels to protect it. We must also design it. We cannot forever be copying. Is US doing it? Must US do it before you will do it? Can we not start something? And I think we must come together, even as the media, to say, let us design an Afro-democracy, democracy that works for Africa, where oath of office will be taken, will be administered by the highest feared priests of that land. The priest that everybody fear will come and administer the oath of office to you. Go enter the office and misbehave. Don't carry anyone a Bible that they have not even read, Quran that they will never read. And somebody will raise up his hand, a chief judge, innocent chief judge, they will come and make him to administer oath to you. So those aspects to be uttered a bit, because our democracy is getting very serious. An African democracy, you can see what's happening around our borders. So we must ensure that those who take sovereignty, who take power, must be consecrated in a way that they can be uttered in the beard of the line. It's an Afro-democracy. We must embrace it. Embrace compulsory voting as a design to protect the African democracy.
What do you make of the insinuations in some quarters that this bill is a diversion of attention from the realities on the ground in terms of the quality of life of Nigerians? I mean, you've seen some of the comments and reactions thrilling the APC summit and the endorsement of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for the second term, and then, of course, the economic situation of the country.
Politics is politics. It is economic situation. Poverty remains poverty. Riches will remain riches. So the political system cannot freeze because people are poor or because there are ill economic policies. It's not diversionary. Politics will play their own. Economic realities will face it. So these are two separate areas. They have a way of meeting. They have a meeting point. They have a nexus. But one of them cannot collapse the other. It will never happen. So the fact that, oh, people are poor, oh, nobody should hold party summit, oh, nobody should talk politics. No, it continues. While those who handle the economy are also working on it. So it is not diversionary. You cannot even have a good life without a good electoral process. So electoral process must be fixed first before the economy adjusts itself to align for our collective growth.
President Ivoka, for your thoughts. This is still the program this morning on ITV, on the ITV network. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get the conversation rolling. Please stay with us. Right, if you're just joining, this is your ultimate current affairs program this morning on ITV, right here on the ITV network. Right here in our Benin Network Center, we've been x-raying the proposed bill to enforce voting in Nigeria. We have the privilege and, of course, the honor to have as a guest President Iboka, who has been taking us on his own aspect and mindset on the bill. If you're still there with us, President Iboka, let's talk a little bit about Nigeria. Earlier on, you actually made the motion that Nigerians usually tend to wait to see other countries, other foreign countries actually doing something before they can actually take a cue from there. And you made mention of the fact that there is need for us to start something. Do you think Nigeria has the institutional backing and standing to actually go ahead with this particular bill and, of course, make sure it's effective?
You mean institutional backing?
Do we have the institutional standing? Are we ready to carry out this?
Oh, they are there. The INEC is the institution responsible to ensure that this thing work. The police is there to ensure that there's enforcement. The civil defense, they are there to ensure that there's enforcement. So the institutional backing is there. We are not in a banana republic. We have more than the institutional backing to enforce any legislation that is made in the country.
All right, so what do you think federal government should do to ensure that they carry it out actually well?
I think they need to do
steps
more
should they take?
sensitization. More sensitization. The NOA, INEC should partner with Nigeria National Orientation Agency, NOA, to ensure that these ideas sink well into Nigerians. And also there should be mass voters registration. Because if I'm voting age and nobody comes to register me and you say I didn't do compulsory voting, that's wrong. So it should be a mass voters registration. And there should also be incentive for voting. Incentive in the sense that those who are already on the social register must be able to show that they voted in the election previous, or otherwise they will be removed. So those incentives should be there. And also those who are voting age who are voting, we have some incentive and some percentage as per their school fees when they get to the university. So you can have 15% deduction and all that. So those incentives should be there to encourage people to vote, to encourage Nigerians to be responsible, to encourage mass mobilization and mass voting in elections.
Bill is a right step in the right direction, even though we have seen some legal luminaries describing it as an infringement on the fundamental human rights of Nigerians. You want to have further comments along those lines?
It's a right step in the right direction. Like I've told you, that the fact that Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C said it is wrong does not necessarily mean it is wrong. They have not looked at the perspective of having an Afro-designed democracy, which Nigeria must embrace. If we are not even careful, what's happening in our neighborhood might happen. So we must design our democracy to be massively, popularly supported by the masses, so that you can resist everyone toward clandestine movement to access power. Citizens must massively vote for you and defend the electoral process. So the law should be passed into law to ensure that people come out. And Nigerians, when there's a law backing an attitude, you will discover that you have the best of Nigerians. So irrespective of the postulations of our learned lawyers, activists, and donor organizations and all that, what is important as Africa, we must have our uniqueness to our democracy so that we don't lose it.
All right, Mr. President, how do you situate the challenge of vote buying in this conversation of this compulsory bill in voting. Vote buying has been a major challenge in the
Yes.
electoral process. Yeah.
Thank you for raising this issue. Mass voting defies vote buying. 10,000 times 1,005 voters is a whole lot of money. It can't go into one bag. So by the time you come to a polling unit to come and buy vote of 300 and you see 1,005, you are already destabilized. So one of the ways to curb it is this mass voting. And if we can go on and on to tell you the advantage of mass voting. And the way the position we meted out, we discovered that government will not even enforce it. They will not enforce it. Nobody wants to do something that is disadvantage to him. So I'm even sure that a lot of people who are criticizing it are actually trying to negatively criticize it so that they can be positively enforced. You will see this conversation. Like I've just told you now, you will discover that it will not work. They will not do it. Because they know that if they do it, it will rumple the electoral system. There will be a lot of accountability. There will be a lot of transparency. There will be a lot of real voting statistics. So it's something that we should work on. And so anybody who is criticizing it may have a maybe ulterior motive of criticizing it. Something that we should work on. And you know, in Nigeria, what you criticize is what they do. What you applaud, they won't do it. So those of us applauding it now, we will try to be cautious so that we don't make them to run away from it.
All right, just before we let you go, my colleague asked a question about the strength of our institutions to be able to back this bill. You said emphatically that the institutional framework, they are there, the institutional organizations to help to drive it, they're all available. You talked about INEC and all of that. But there's something I want to draw your attention to. The fact that INEC has the prerogative to decide the mode of transmission of election results. What do you make of these as a challenge in the transparency, fairness, and equity, and the credibility of our electoral process?
It is not really a challenge as it is. The court have interpreted the role of INEC clearly. INEC can do paper transmission, they can do online transmission. But nothing stops the parties from showing that in this paper transmission they have done, they altered it. That this was the real paper that was distributed to the party agents. This was the real paper that was given to the voters who came. Then they will tender it. Oh, we also have an online transmission of the result. This is what we collected. So what the court will do is to compare the online transmission with any of the paper. So if the paper from INEC is contrary to the one online, and the one online aligns with the same paper that was gotten from the polling unit that is in the hand of the polling agent, the court will use it. So the court is only saying that they have options, but not to have to mutilate, not to have to alter. They only say you have options to record and transmit. That's all.
This option, don't you think that this option that they have creates that room for manipulating the electoral process, as it were? I mean, why don't you just go through the simplest path of ensuring that once the election takes place, we can transmit election result electronically to INEC portal or server, as the case may be, and then we collate this election, because we have seen now that those demons that used to parade themselves in the electoral process, particularly at the identification or the accreditation stage, they have left there now. They have moved to the collation center. And that's why you're seeing that between the collation center and the INEC, collation center, a lot happened that tends to undermine the electoral process.
I agree with you. I agree with you. What I've just stated earlier is very clear on the point. The transmission of result online can also have its own issue. If it's okay, we must stick to it. Any result not transmitted online is not a result. What about if you have network glitch? What about if they hack the system in a particular senatorial area? So you now say there's no result from that election. No. And what the court said is that any result you bring you bring. If you bring online, we will use it. If you use paperback, we will use it. But when any of this one is disputed, the person disputing it will have to bring his own to show. The person disputing it will bring his own to show that that result is not authentic. So anyone you are able to bring, you bring online also, you print it out. You won't need to now attach the physical paper to it. That, oh, this paper was distributed to us at the police center or collection center. It is not the same with what is in this online result. So it is not closure. It's not a closure or a road path to rig election.
Okay.
The court decided to be careful not to also foreclose a scenario where there is glitches or where the part itself for the registration of the vote is stolen. Or so you must be able to produce something that shows that people voted in your area. So any other person opposing it has to also show something to show that the figures here is different from this. But the person proving now have the overwhelming responsibility to bring more persons to show to the court that he is correct more than the INEC who conducted the election.
All right, it's been worthwhile having you on board our program today. President Agboha Esquire, Executive Director, Freedom of Information Council. Thank you so much for your time with us on the show, TM. I hope next time we reach out to you, you always oblige us. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'll be at the studio if I'm giving sufficient notice. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Agboha.